What's good, y'all? Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Make sure everything is good on this side. All right, everything's good for now. All right, first and foremost, I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to the Most High God, Yahweh. And I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. I am your host with the most, King Hebrew. Welcome to Hebraic Biblical Perspective, man. All right, this is a segment of mine called Hebrew Biblical Perspective. You understand? We go into some things as Hebrew Israelites. We go into a lot of prophecy. We go into current events. You know what I'm saying? We go into a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? We tap into a lot of things, whether it could be urban news, but we mainly focus on prophecy, right? Because the spirit of the Lord is prophecy. You know what I'm saying? I want to get that real quick before we get into what I'm going to get into, the book of Daniel, right? We're going to get into some prophecies, man. Daniel, the 8th chapter. We're going to go into the little horn, the Persians and the Grecians, right? We're going to go into the wars described in Daniel. Let's get this real quick. Revelation chapter 19 and verse 10. Revelation chapter 19 and verse 10. And I fell at his feet to worship him, and he said unto me, See thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren that have the testimony of Jesus. Worship God. For the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So we're going to get into some prophecy and go into the book of Daniel. You know what I'm saying? Daniel has to be one of my favorite books, if not my favorite book. I ain't gonna lie to you. It goes into a lot of wars. It goes into a lot. You know what I'm saying? Daniel is a heavy book, and you gotta know what you're talking about when you get into it, because it is heavy. It goes into a lot of history, man. So, you could definitely have fun, especially when you actually know what you're talking about. It makes it that much better, because people go into Daniel and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? So prophecy is a discourse emanating from divine inspiration and declaring the purposes of God, whether by reproving and admonishing the wicked, or comforting the afflicted, or revealing things hidden, by foretelling future events. You know what I'm saying? So it is important in these last days to go into future events. You know what I'm saying? The prediction of events relating to Christ's kingdom and his speedy triumph, together with the consolations and admonitions pertaining to it, the spirit of prophecy, the divine mind, to which the prophetic faculty is due. You know what I'm saying? If I said that word right, faculty. You know what I'm saying? So it is important, you know what I'm saying? But we're not going to go into like prophecy, but we are going to go into some history. You know what I'm saying? So this has been on my mind. I had this in my notes. I never really recorded this, so it is important that I do go into it. I want to go into the history, and we will be back. We're going to go into some future events the next video, but I do want to go into some history, because some people may not know, right? Daniel, the 8th chapter, the vision of the ram and the goat. You know what I'm saying? It's definitely talking about the Grecians and the Persians. You know what I'm saying? In Daniel chapter 8 and verse 6. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. Let's get to it. Daniel chapter 8 and verse 20. The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Okay. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, right? Talking about Alexander the Great. So again, The Grecians defeated the Persians. The Grecians defeated the Persians. They had back-to-back wars. You understand? Let me see if I could screenshot this, right? But it's important that when you guys go into Daniel, again, this isn't prophecy because prophecy is future. This already happened, right? But I'm bringing this out in case some people want to go into Daniel, right? So it's important to go into the history. You know what I'm saying? It's not a sin. It's not a sin to go into these things. You know what I'm saying? It's very important that you guys know what y'all talking about, man. When we go into Daniel, and let me see if this gonna pull up. Okay, it should pull up right here. We have right here, as y'all can see, right? The last major decisive battles were a coalition of Greek city-states. Hold on, I'm trying to make this. All right, we'll just leave it like that. Right? The Greek city-states defeated the, excuse me, decisive, I'm gonna start here. The last major decisive battles were a coalition of Greek city-states defeated the Persian Empire. Invasions were the Battle of Plataea and the Battle of Mycale in 479. Then you had the Peace of Calais. You understand? So yes, the Persians defeated the Grecians, defeated the Persians. You had Alexander the Great. He became that king that you read about in Daniel 8 and 21. And you had 4 kingdoms shall stand upon the nation. So you had Alexander the Great. He had 4 generals. He had Lysimachus, Ptolemy, Cassander, and Seleucus, which we're going to go into that. The Seleucid Empire. Then we're going to go into Antiochus III and Antiochus IV, who came from Seleucus, one of Alexander the Great, his 4 generals. Let's get the little horn. Hold on. So let's get into Antiochus III. Let's go back here. Daniel chapter 8, verse 9. So again, Daniel chapter 8, verse 8. There the he-goat waxed very great. When he was young, the great horn was broken, and forward came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. So again, this is talking about Alexander the Great and his 4 generals, right? His 4 generals. Let's get this real quick. Alexander the Great, his 4 generals: Ptolemy, Seleucus, Lysimachus, and Cassander. These are the 4 generals. Now let's get First Maccabees 1 real quick. It's the book of First Maccabees, chapter 1 and verse 1. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came up out of the land of Shedem, had smitten Darius, the king of the Persians and the Medes. Okay, we just read that in Daniel chapter 8. You understand, where the Grecians went to war with the Persians. The Grecians defeated the Persians. Then Alexander the Great, he was the king that did that, right? He was the last king standing. So again, and he was a Macedonian, which means what? He was a Grecian, right? He smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, and he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece, right? He was the first to do it, and had many wars. Excuse me, verse 2, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and kings and and nations and kings, who became tributaries unto him. So as Alexander the Great, he was going over, right? He was conquering the world, right? He went to war with the Persians. You know what I'm saying? He was going crazy. He was spoiling nations, and they became tributaries to him. Meaning what? They had to pay him taxes. They had to give him, you know what I'm saying? They had to give him all of their riches, whether it was gold, food supply. You know what I'm saying? This man right here, he was ruling the world at one point. You understand? He was ruling the world. Let's right, this man right here. You understand? Alexander the Great, he was going around conquering the world. You understand? Verse 5. And after these things, he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought upon with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, right? And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. Who put crowns upon themselves? His four generals, right? Alexander the Great, he died in 323 BC, right? If you guys want to go into the Grecians and the Persians, again, this is talking about, excuse me, this is going into Daniel, the 8th chapter. Okay, Daniel, the 8th chapter. Daniel, Daniel chapter 8 and verse 20 again. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, right? Excuse me. Right? And his four notable ones. Oh, this is bullshit. All right, so the four, so the four generals, right, are Ptolemy, Seleucus, Lysimachus, and Cassander. Now we're gonna go into the Seleucid Empire. They had the Syrian War, right? Now, out of the four generals, right, you have Seleucus, right? Seleucus, and out of Seleucus, you had Antiochus the third, right, who was going to war with Rome over Egypt, which we're going to read about right here in Daniel chapter 8 and verse 9, right? That little horn. And out of one of them, right? Out of one of Alexander the Great, his generals, there's one specific horn that Antiochus the third and the fourth came from, which is one of Alexander the Great, one of his generals named Seleucus. You had Alexander the Great, Seleucus, and then Antiochus the third, right? Daniel chapter 8 and verse 9. And one of them, and out of one of them came forth the little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, right? Talking about Egypt, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. He magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, in the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So Antiochus, now during this time, right, Antiochus the third, they were taken down. They took away our sacrifices, right? First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 10. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surname Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been an hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Okay, so again, it's talking about Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, notice how it said that. Now, Antiochus, surname Epiphanes, is Antiochus the fourth, son of Antiochus the king. Antiochus the third is the father of Antiochus the fourth. Antiochus, surname Epiphanes, is Antiochus the fourth. He's the son of Antiochus the third. Okay, now they were going to war. Now you have something called the Syrian Wars, where the Syrians were going to war with the Egyptians. But the land of Egypt belonged to Rome, but Rome was going to war with the Grecians. You understand? So it was a lot going on during this time. Oh, let's get. So you had. Now let's go back here. Now the little horn in Daniel chapter 8 and verse 9. This is talking about. This is going to the Syrian wars, right? The Syrian and the Egyptians. So we're gonna start. You have Seleucus, who is one of Alexander the Great. He's one of his generals. Seleucus was one of Alexander the Great's generals, and through him, through his posterity, came Antiochus the third, then the fourth. Now let's go back here. Right, you had let's get Rome declares war against Macedonia, right? Which is the Grecians, which leaves the war against the Ptolemies, and orders Antiochus to keep their hands off Egypt. Okay, now this is Egypt is known as the South. Antiochus. So as Rome is going to war with the Grecians, they're telling Antiochus, hey, keep your hands off Egypt because this is vital. Egypt is vital for Rome's food supply. Antiochus cancels his invasion of Egypt and instead attacks Ptolemaic possessions in Sicilia and Lycia. Let's go back down. Now we're going to read how Antiochus III, he went into he went into Egypt. He conquered Egypt, right? Let's get First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 16. Now, when the kingdom was established, what kingdom? The Seleucid Empire. First Maccabees 1 and 16. Now, when the kingdom was established, the Seleucid Empire, before Antiochus III, right? Before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have dominion of two realms, right? Which was Syria. He already had Syria. Now he wanted to go over there to Egypt, but Egypt belonged to Rome. So Rome told Antiochus, do not go to Egypt. Egypt belongs to us. But as Rome is going to war with the Grecians, they didn't have time to watch over Antiochus because they were already at war. So Antiochus, he saw that Rome was occupied with another war with the Grecians. He went over there to Egypt in verse 17, right? Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots, elephants, and horsemen, right? And made war against the Ptolemy of Egypt, but Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. This is what we're reading about in Daniel chapter 8 and verse 9. And out of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south. It's talking about Egypt. That little horn is Antiochus III. He went to make war against the land of the south, which is Egypt. Let's pull this up. Maybe it'll show it, maybe not. Right? Egypt. See? Strong's H5045. The south. Egypt. See, Egypt is in here. See, the land of the south, Egypt was always known as the south. Right? The south. Now, it could be in different contexts, right? Now, the south isn't always referring to Egypt, but in this context, it is. Right? We got that. Now, Antiochus has smitten Egypt. He returned again in the 143rd year, right? 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar and the candlestick and light and all the vessels. So he took the candlesticks, he took the vessels, he went into the sanctuary. Right after he went into Egypt, then he started to go into the temple and take away everything that belongs to the Lord. Right? Speaking very proudly, right? Verse 24, he went into the land, he went to Jerusalem, right? With the great massacre, killing people, right? Speaking very proudly. We're reading about this, guys. This is history. You got to go into this thing. History and prophecy, man. That's what we focus on right here. Well, at least as Hebrew Israelites, we focus on history and prophecy, right? Daniel chapter 8, verse 11. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down, and a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Understand? This is what Antiochus, this is what the Seleucid Empire was doing under Antiochus, right? going into the temple, taking away the vessels, taking away the candlesticks, killing people with a great massacre. You understand? Going into Egypt, plundering them, taking their spoils. You understand? And there was a great mourning in Israel and in every place. You understand? This what was going on. But Antiochus, he did something very stupid. He got caught up. Antiochus got caught up because he went back again to Egypt for a second time, right? Now you have something called the Peace of Apamea. Okay, you have the Peace of Apamea, where the Peace of Apamea, right, cedes all territory north of the Taurus to the Roman ally Pergamon and agrees to pay an indemnity to Rome. His youngest son Antiochus is sent to Italy as hostage. Okay, this is when Antiochus III, he got caught. You understand? He got caught trying to go to Rome for the second time and got caught up with Rome. Rome finally got caught up with him. Let's get the Treaty of Apamea, right? Again, this is history, right? The Treaty of Apamea. Let's get into it. The Treaty of Apamea was a peace treaty conducted in 188 BC between the Roman Republic and Antiochus III, right? The treaty took place after Roman victories at the Battle of Thermopylae, if I'm saying it right, the Battle of Magnesia, and after Roman naval victories over the Seleucid navy. Okay. Now, let's get right. This is during the Seleucid Wars. Rome used the threat. So this is during the Sixth Syrian War. The Sixth Syrian War. So Rome insisted that the Seleucids leave the Ptolemaic Empire alone after occupying much of Egypt and Cyprus in 168 BC. Seleucid king Antiochus IV grudgingly accepted. Now, this is Antiochus IV. Now, this is actually, I did skip it. Let's get the day of Eleusis, because I did skip it. I did jump the gun. Now, Antiochus Antiochus IV was a hostage at Rome, right? He was a hostage at Rome. Let's get this real quick. The day of Eleusis, because these are two events. Antiochus. So this is after the Battle of Magnesia. You had the Sixth Syrian War. So it was the Treaty of Apamea. This happened first. The Treaty of Apamea happened first. Then it was the day of Eleusis. Now let's read about this real quick in First Maccabees. Let's get First Maccabees. Now, and there came out of them a wicked root, right? First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 10. And out of them came a wicked root. Antiochus, surname Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome. So Antiochus, surname Epiphanes, is Antiochus the fourth, son of Antiochus the king, which is the third. Okay, now why was Antiochus the fourth a hostage at Rome? Because Antiochus the third, under the peace of Apamea, Antiochus the third, he agreed to pay a what? A indemnity to Rome, meaning what? Antiochus III had to use his son as collateral for invading territory, which was Egypt, that belonged to Rome. Rome said, listen, you owe us money. You don't have the money. We're going to use your son as collateral. That's why it says here, his youngest son, Antiochus, is sent to Italy as hostage. As what? As collateral. This is under the Peace of Apamea or the Treaty of Apamea, whatever. Then Antiochus visits Babylon, right? In an attempt to obtain money, Antiochus attacks a temple in Susa but is killed. Let's also read about that in the book of Maccabees. Let's get, I believe it's Second Maccabees. Second Maccabees 1 and 13. Let's get Second Maccabees chapter 1. So again, quick recap. Antiochus the fourth, right, the father of Antiochus the third, under the Treaty of Apamea, now he agreed to pay Rome indemnity. You understand? So he uses his son Antiochus the third as collateral. So he's sent as an hostage. Antiochus the third, the son of Antiochus the fourth, the son of Antiochus the third, is being used as collateral to pay Rome for invading Egyptian territory, which at the time belonged to Rome. Okay, now in an attempt to obtain money, because again, this fool ain't have no damn money, so he got caught stealing. He ain't got no damn money. Antiochus attacks a temple in Susa. Let's read about this in Second Maccabees chapter 1. For Second Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 13, for when the leader was coming to Persia and the army with him that seemed invincible, they were slain in the temple of Nenea by the deceit of Nenea's priest. For Antiochus, as though he would marry her, came into the place, and his friends that were with him to receive money in the name of a dowry. So Antiochus the third, he tried to marry a Persian woman to get money from her. Verse 15, right? So he tried to receive money in name of a dowry. You understand? Verse 15, which when the priest of Nenea had set forth, and he was entered with a small company into the compass of the temple, they shut the temple as soon as Antiochus was come in, and opening a door of the roof, They threw stones like thunderbolts and stroked down the captain, hewed them in pieces, smote off their heads, and cast them to those that were without. Blessed be our God in all things, who have delivered up the ungodly. Now, Antiochus III, right? This is his judgment. You know what I'm saying? He owed Rome. He didn't have the money. He tried to marry a woman that was Persian, right? He tried to receive money in the name of a dowry. You understand? And as soon as he went into the temple, they killed him. This is Antiochus III. Now, this payment, all of his payments that he owed Rome, is falling on his son Antiochus IV, who's a hostage at Rome, right? And hostage at Rome. Let's get Antiochus IV, right? Surname Epiphanes, right? So, after the Syrian War, Rome and the Seleucid Empire conclude the Peace of Apamea. The Seleucids are to pay an indemnity, and Antiochus is held captive in Rome, right? We just read that. Okay, cool. Now, Antiochus is replaced as hostage. Antiochus is replaced as hostage by Seleucus' son Demetrius. So, Antiochus III, he had another son. The Seleucid commander Heliodorus killed Seleucus IV, who was succeeded by his son Antiochus, who was too young to rule. Now, Antiochus is replaced as hostage. The Seleucid commander kills. Right, so Seleucus the fourth, Philopator, right, is the son of Antiochus the third. Right after the death of Antiochus the third, Seleucus, right, his son becomes king and tries to restore the Seleucid Empire by diplomatic means. To pay the Roman indemnity, Seleucus orders his commander Heliodorus to obtain money in the Temple of Jerusalem, but he enters opposition. Heliodorus returns. Heliodorus kills Seleucus, right? His wife, Laodice, appears to have married Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who succeeds his brother. You understand? So now this is when. Now let's read about that. Let's get Heliodorus. Now, all right, so now we're going to go into Antiochus IV. So now we read about how Antiochus III earlier in the video, right? How Antiochus III, he owed Rome money, he couldn't pay, he didn't have the money. He tried to marry a woman that was Persian, went into the temple, and they killed him. Now, this is Antiochus IV. Now, the money that his father owed Rome, that bill was passed on to him. Now, in 2nd Maccabees chapter 9, verse 1, and about that time, Antiochus with dishonor out of the country of Persia, For he had entered the city called Persepolis, and went about to rob the temple and to hold the city, whereupon the multitude running to defend themselves with their weapons put them to flight. And so it happened, Antiochus being put to flight of the inhabitants returned with shame. So Antiochus the fourth, because he also didn't have money, he also tried to rob the Persians like his father and was not successful. So he had to return with shame. And then, because of this, right, you have something called the Day of Seleucus. This was, Antiochus angered at his loss of control over the king, invaded again in 168 BC. Now, this is before Second Maccabees 9. So before he tried to go into the Persians and take their money, he tried to plunder the Egyptians. The Egyptians sent to Rome Antiochus, angered at his loss of control over the king, invaded again in 168 BC. The Egyptians sent to Rome asking for help, and the Senate dispatched Gaius Popilius Leonius to Alexandria, right? Now, the day of Seleucus, hold on, let's get. So, Rome defeated the Macedonians at the Battle of Pindus, potentially freeing up armies, right? Antiochus begged to have time to consider, but Popilius drew a circle around him in the sand with his cane and told him to decide before he stepped outside of it. Antiochus chose to obey the Roman ultimatum to avoid new Roman Seleucid war. You understand? And that is called the Day of Eleusis, which ended the Sixth Syrian War. Right? Antiochus hoped to conquer the Egyptian territory. Still, the Ptolemies were great. They were weakened. The Ptolemies were weakened by the war as well as the conflict between Ptolemy. Okay, so the point is, this man tried to go into Egypt. He didn't have no money. They Roman caught up with him. They said, "Hey, you're not taking nothing. You got to go. Now you owe us money," which led to him going into Persia. The same thing his dad tried to do. He also went into Persia. So he tried to rob Egypt. That didn't work. He tried to rob the Persians. That didn't work. This man had no money. He had nothing. That's why he was put to shame. And that's why he was so angry that he tried to, he said, Second Maccabees chapter 9, verse 4, he tried to persecute the Jews. You understand? Right? And then he ended up dying, right? He died a painful, horrible death. The Second Maccabees 9, right? All praises to the Most High. He died a horrible death, man. You understand? The Second Maccabees chapter 9, beautiful chapter, beautiful chapter. So again, you know what I'm saying? This is going into the history of Daniel, the 8th chapter. You understand? Go over the sources that we pulled up, you know what I'm saying? We went into some history. You know what I'm saying? It's in history, and like they always say, man, like father, like son, right? Both of these clowns got caught up, you know what I'm saying? And this is judgment of the Lord. You understand? This is judgment of the Lord. Now, I do want to get, I want to read about Antiochus the third. Uh, hold on, family, hold on. What's that? First Maccabees 1:16. Let's get this real quick. Let's see. First Maccabees 1:16. See, we might do a part two. So again, let's get real quick. I want to pull this up, and then before we end, I'm gonna end right. So at Eleusis, right? Papalius Leonas, with whom he had been friends during his stay in Rome, but instead of a friendly welcome, Papalius offered the king an ultimatum from the Roman Senate. He must evacuate Egypt and Cyprus immediately, right? Antiochus begged to have time to consider, but Papalius drew a circle around him in the sand with his cane and told him to decide before he stepped out of it. Now let's get Daniel 11 and 29. Daniel 11. Daniel, Daniel chapter 11, verse 29. At the time appointed, he shall return and come toward the south, right, Egypt, but it shall not be as the former or as the latter. For the ships of Shittim shall come against him. Therefore, he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. So, this is now Shittim is talking about Rome. So Antiochus IV, he tried to return to Egypt again, right? The first time he succeeded. The second time he got caught up by the ships of Chittim, right, at the day of Seleucus. So Daniel chapter 11 and verse 30 is specifically talking about the day of Eleusis right here. The day of Eleusis, which ended the Sixth Syrian War. Antiochus IV, he tried to invade Egypt, but he got caught up by the Romans, which is also Shittim. You understand? Which is Shittim. Let's get this real quick. Strong's H 3794. Right? Romans, Shittim. It said the Greeks or Romans. See that? But we all know in this case, it was the Romans, the ships of Shittim, the Romans that got caught up. You understand? It was Popilius Leonidas of Rome. Popilius was sent. Egyptian told the Romans, hey, Antiochus IV, he's over here trying to rob us because that territory, the Egyptian territory, belonged to Rome. They sent this guy right here to Antiochus IV. You understand? Gaius Popilius Leonidas, this guy right here, right? He was a Roman. The Egyptians sent to Rome asking for help, and the Senate dispatched Gaius Popilius Leonidas. He was a Roman who caught Antiochus IV trying to rob the Egyptians, right? Which is the land of the south. Reading about that in Romans, the 11th chapter, specifically 29 on down. You understand? But with that, I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to the Most High God, Yahweh. You know what I'm saying? Most High will, you were edified. Again, I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to the Most High God, Yahweh, and I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. Peace and blessings, and shalom.